Hi, and we're going to look at part 2 of crime and deviance. Now we're carrying on for part 1, and here in part 2 we're going to look at how sociologists classify crime. We're going to touch base on crime statistics and who commits crime, the demographics, if you will. And then finally we'll look at a review of the criminal justice system overview. So let's get started. So how do sociologists classify crime? Sociologists categorize crimes based on how they are committed and how society views them. And there's 4 types. There's street crime, occupational or white-collar and or corporate crime, organized crime, and political crime. And we'll begin with, street crime. When you think of crime, these are the categories you most usually think of. Violent crime, like murder, sexual assault, and the like. Property crime, break-in, enters, and theft. And moral crimes, which include prostitution, illegal gambling, and illegal drugs. Just gotta have a cup of coffee. There we go. Thank you for for giving me the opportunity to have a cup of coffee. Occupational. Now, this is also known as white-collar crime, and it consists of illegal activities committed by people in the course of their employment or in dealing with their financial affairs. Some of the key elements here involve a violation of a position of trust in business or government. Now, we've seen, at least in Canada and certainly in the United States, an increased awareness of what would be occupational or white-collar crime. Corporate crime, that's the third, illegal acts committed by corporate employees on behalf of corporations with its support. Examples can be antitrust violations, false advertising, infringements on patents, copyrights, and trademarks. Now, the costs can be extraordinary. The cost of corporate crime exceeds that of street crime. Tax evasion costs about $30 billion a year in Canada. There was, and you can look this up yourself, a Calgary Bre-X gold mining company. It lost about $5 billion of shareholder dollars. In this investment that they were putting out, a geologist had done what's called salting core samples with gold. So you're taking rocks that you say have gold in it and you're putting gold parts in it to get shareholders to believe that there's a lot of gold to be had here and to put more money into that development when there really wasn't any gold there. Actually, that geologist committed suicide when it became clear that's what they had done. Automobile or computer repair shops doing unnecessary work or charging for it when it was nothing to be done. That's been all kinds of examples of that. Occupational accidents and illnesses were the third leading cause of death in Canada. Some of the causes were unsafe working environments. And that's part of that sort of corporate crime. Some of the problems, well, there's more stigma associated with street crime, and that's one. So corporate crime doesn't get a lot of attention, and it's harder to convict on corporate crime. Then the third grouping is organized crime, and it's a business operation that supplies illegal goods and services for profit. The examples can be drug trafficking, prostitution, liquor and cigarette smuggling, loan sharking, money laundering, large-scale thefts like truck hijacking. Interestingly, truck hijacking is becoming a huge crime. Truckers aren't prepared to have someone stop them at gunpoint and take their load. They will just attach it to another truck and drive away with whatever they've got in their truck. So what are some of the elements? Well, it's not a centrally controlled organization. A lot of these I just lost. Where was I? Okay, start again. Some of the elements: it's not a centrally controlled organization. Public demand for cheap goods encouraged the crime. And the deadly nature. Biker gangs in Montreal have resulted in many deaths, so people tend to be shy of sharing too much information. Linked to legitimate enterprises, some of these examples: some terrorist groups use Muslim charities to gather illicit funds for nefarious ends. ISIS and oil sales from overtaken oil fields can be as much as $50 million per month. Huge crime. The fourth grouping of crime is political crime. The illegal or unethical acts involving misuse of power by government officials, or illegal or unethical acts perpetrated against government by others attempting to influence or overthrow said government. This can include kickbacks, insider deals, and fraud to benefit themselves. And you may have seen some of this in the news more recently as it relates to the United States and its political environment. Crime statistics, if we move into that, well, the official crime statistics provide important information on crime. However, the data reflects only those crimes that have been reported to police, and that is a huge part. People are more likely to report a crime when they believe that something can be done about it, and the number of crimes reported to the Police Canadian Uniform Crimes Report, that's the CUR, are just the tip of the iceberg when compared to all the offenses that are actually committed. And I'm sorry, I won't remember where I saw this data, but it was reported that, and I believe this was also in a Canadian statistic, that women who are involved, who are victimized in the home by a partner, crime, will wait to report that crime 38 incidences before reporting. And so if the report indicates, let's say that number is accurate, we'll say 30 times, just to round off the number. And you see in your crime report 100 people reported partner violence, husband attacking or assaulting his wife. And let's say that report goes into the police and that she waited 30 other times before making that report, and we have 100 reported instances. That's 3,000 incidents? 30 times the 100. 30,000 incidences that occurred in real life, and only 100 were reported. That is, so the Canadian Uniform Crimes Report, as much as it's helpful, it doesn't really give a picture of the actuality of crime. Now, one of the ways they try to compensate is what's known with as victimization surveys. These are anonymous self-reports of criminal behavior have made researchers aware that the incidences of most crimes is substantially higher than reported in the CUCR, that's the Canadian Uniform Crimes Report. One survey found that less than 31% of all victimization reported by respondents had been reported to the police. That's just amazing to me. And so we can't really know the incidences of crime without having accurate reporting. So what kind of value or additional information can we glean from this? Well, both kinds of statistics. The truer picture of the reality of crime is possible with both the CUCR and with the victimization surveys. The accuracy of the CUCR is greatest for very serious crimes such as homicide, which is almost always reported, or for crimes like auto theft, where a significant loss can be replaced by insurance if the crime is reported. Available statistics do not provide any information about victimless crimes, such as drug use or illegal gambling. They call them victimless, but are they really victimless? Who is more likely to commit street crime? If we look at demographics, what did the statistics suggest about who's most likely to commit street crime? And what are the correlates of street crime? Now, when we talk about correlates, an important note here. Correlates just mean that when a crime is committed, let's say this theft on the street was committed right here. So what are the other demographic related information? It doesn't mean cause. It just means this person happened to be this age, of this gender, of this economic group. But if we look at all crime, we need to look at what other related things occur at that same time, and these demographics are that. So these are correlates. These aren't causes. These are just a picture. So age, that's one of the first and one of the most significant factors. For patterns, the arrests increase from early adolescence, peaking at young adulthood, and steadily decline with age. This pattern reveals that crime is a young person's game. That doesn't mean older people don't commit crime, but the disproportionate number of young people has more to do with it's a young person's activity. People, as they get older, still commit crime, but not to the same degree. Now, this pattern reveals that crime is a young person's game. It's common in all societies where data is available. Why? Well, adulthood is a time of expected, conformity. Also, its simple maturation process seems relevant, that as we grow up, we learn to become more familiar with the laws and stick within them. Now, gender is another correlate. Another one of the most significant factors, most crime is committed by males. That doesn't mean women don't. Men make up over 80% of those charged with crimes. That's charged with. Now, remember, crime is underreported. They are more involved in violent crimes and a majority in major property offenses. However, there is a narrowing of this gap. From 1968 to 2000, the percentage of offenses committed by women increased from 9% to 17%. Still well under men, but women are entering into that field of reported crimes more often now too. A third correlate is social class. Lower class are more overrepresented in arrest and prison admission. And why might this be? Well, is it because they commit more crime or they are more likely to be targeted? And that's a good question. Suicide, alcoholism, mental illness, and drug addiction are more common in lower class. On the other hand, occupational and white-collar crime, costing Canadians much more than street crime, is higher among the middle and upper class. Another correlate we can look at is race and ethnicity. Now, these are U.S. stats. African American and Hispanic people are more likely to commit street crime than others. In Canada, the non-Aboriginal visible ethnic minorities were underrepresented in federal correction institutions. Indigenous people, many studies have shown that they are overrepresented in prison. The criminal justice system, we'll look at that now, and this is looking at the structure and the roles. The criminal justice system includes police, the courts, and the prisons. However, it's not a large, complete, and unified system. Rather, it's a collection of somewhat interrelated, semi-autonomous bureaucracies. And we'll start with the police. The police have a function, and they are the concrete extension of the state to provide social order. Now, when I say state, I don't mean the United States. The state represents government. So the police, they're the concrete extension. They're the hand, if you will, or the fingers of the hand of the federal government to provide social order. Adhere to the norms, the social norms that are formal are laws. This is the extent to maintain peace in the community. They have a broad range: finding lost kids, counseling crime victims, notifying next of kin in fatal accidents. There's a lot of things that they do. So what ties these diverse functions together? First, they have authority. You know when you see, and you know how when you're driving, and you might be doing above the speed limit more than that forgivable range. Maybe you're doing 115 on a highway at 80, and you see a black and white vehicle out ahead of you. What do? You know they have the authority to pull you over. You start slowing down. You might apply your brakes. You see others do the same. It's the awareness of that authority that they can pull you over, charge you, and it can affect your insurance. 2, authority is backed by non-negotiable force. And that's an important element. They can, if the conditions are so, use non-negotiable force. And 3, they have a high degrees of discretion. They don't have to pull a gun at everybody who speeds. They can certainly approach the car. They have a degree of discretion, which is why sometimes you'll get a warning and not a ticket. All right, so that's the police function. Then we have the court. And the court decides the guilt or innocence of those accused of committing a crime. Now, the process is basically adversarial, and what I mean by that is the two lawyers, the defense and the prosecutor, tend to be adversarial. They're fighting against one another to try to convince the jury or the judge of innocence or guilt. So it's adversarial. There's a prosecutor, the lawyer who represents the state or the government. The defense lawyer asserts that the accused or the defendant is innocent. The judge and or jury are the final decision as to the guilt or innocence of the defendant lies with them. Now, there is an alternative approach that's getting more opportunity, more play, is what's called restorative justice. And here it's to seek to return to the focus of the justice system to repairing the harm that has been done to the victim and the community by the perpetrator. So it's a meeting. And the elements in this instance is the involvement of the victim and any other member of the community as active members of the process to reconcile offenders with those they have harmed, and it has a roots in their traditional society. So the whole idea is to find a solution that fits within that individual, the victim, and the community. Now, the third element, police, court, and prison. Prison is the third point, and punishment is the concept. Punishment in this instance is any action designed to deprive a person of things of value, including liberty, meaning you're in jail and you don't have the free liberty to roam about the country because of some of the offenses the person is thought to have committed. Now, we send people to jail for several reasons whose goals may often be in conflict with one another, and one of the first goals is retribution. This is to stop and punish people for their crimes. So that's the retribution part, to punish people for their crimes. Incapacitation is to retain them from committing more crimes. You can't commit a crime. Well, it's harder to commit a crime from in prison on people outside the prison. Rehabilitation is the third point, and this is to change offenders so they can return to the community as law-abiding citizens. And then the fourth is deterrence. For some, the awareness of jail, prison, instills fear of that punishment to reduce future crimes. I might choose not to do that crime because I don't want to find myself in prison. That's going to affect a good portion of my life. Okay, there's the part 2, looking at an overview of crime categories, crime statistics, and the justice system. I hope this has been helpful for you. We are getting very close to the end, so keep up the good work. Finish to the end of the race. Bye now.